Hello my friends and welcome to my very first Baldur's Gate 3 video of 2024. I am super excited to bring this one to you because I've got an incredibly spicy one for you today. This is honestly one of the funniest builds I think I've ever done. We are going to turn Astarion into the ultimate Mageslayer, a character who simply by existing prevents enemy spellcasters from ever casting a spell. This character will have incredible mobility and damage, but also be a perfect 100% counter to every single enemy spellcaster in the game, completely negating all of their magical abilities. I will say this build revolves around a glitch and is too strong for actual play, so I wouldn't recommend this for your actual playthrough, at least not for the first time through the game, but this is such a funny build that I really wanted to share it with you. This build revolves around two core components. The first is the Shadow Monk ability, Shadow Step. Now, you may remember from my patch note review that in patch 5, Shadow Step was made no longer a spell, so you can teleport from shadow to shadow even while silenced or otherwise prevented from casting spells. Normally, this isn't a big deal, because there's no real way in the game to just prevent a whole group of characters from being able to cast spells. Or is there? Enter the Susser Flower. The Susser Flower is an item from the Underdark that, when carried, prevents the holder and everything around it from being able to cast spells. This is 100% efficient, completely prevents all spell casting, there's no save. As long as you are in the radius, you can't cast spells at all. However, it has a serious restriction. You can't remove it from the Underdark because the Susser Bloom will wither and die. Except, look where we are. This isn't the Underdark. So using a glitch, we can bring the Susser Flower with us for the entire game, allowing our Shadow Monk to passively and perfectly prevent enemy spellcasters from being able to cast spells. If I move next to someone, they can't cast. So as long as I can get myself next to them, which we can do very easily using the teleport effect of Shadow Step, which is resourceless and does not count as a spell. As long as there's darkness, we can jump on an enemy spellcaster. We can prevent them from casting a spell. First, I'm going to show you how the glitch works, and then I will talk you through the build. This will be kind of a build skeleton, because the core concept is really just using the glitch alongside Shadow Step to allow you to make yourself into this incredible mage-slaying behemoth. And so I will also say you may want to refer to my sort of more general Shadow Monk guide, which I believe is called The Best Shadow Monk in Baldur's Gate 3. But let's talk about how to get the Susser Flower out of the Underdark. So I'm going to load up a game here. So the first step is to enter, of course, the Underdark, where the Susser Flowers are found. You can find them at the Susser tree. You go up into the branches, and there's a few Susser Flowers. You need to gather at least 2. Once you've gathered 2 Susser Flowers, you can combine them into a stack of 2 flowers. This is important. Then, split the stack into 2 stacks of 1 Susser Flower, and send them both to your camp. This sends them to your camp stash, allowing you to then access it. Now that the Susser Flowers have been split and then sent to your camp stash, we fast travel out of the Underdark to any non-Underdark location, and then go to your camp, open your chest,
anything of use?
and in the chest you are going to find that there is 1 intact Susser Bloom as well as a withered petal. Normally when you exit the Underdark they will wither, but because we split the stacks, it actually creates a new item, which has a different item ID than the basic Susser Bloom, thanks to a small oversight on Larian's part. And the second type of item does not have the trigger that causes it to wither. So you now have a Susser Bloom that is immune to sunlight. I think this is pretty cool because it really fits very well with Astarion's lore as well. So it makes an excellent complement to his existing character lore. This Susser Bloom, as long as you don't enter and exit the Underdark again, will never wither, so you can take it with you as long as you want. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this, of course. You can slip it into the inventory of an enemy spellcaster, and they won't be able to cast spells. You can drop it on the ground, but you can also have your Shadow Monk carry it and passively and permanently emit an anti-magic field. The Shadow Monk can then teleport on top of enemy spellcasters, preventing them from casting spells and beating the crap out of them without them getting to do anything that they want to do. I'm going to go over what I think the best build to make use of this is, so let's just quickly jump in and do that. So, of course, for this build, we're going to want to be a monk. You could actually start with one level of rogue for some additional skill access, but just for the fastest access to the core combo of the build, you, I think, are best off starting with monk. This will get you access to Shadow Step just about the time when you have reliably gotten sus with your Susser Flower, and so you are able to get the core combo of the build online as quickly as possible. For your ability scores, I'm going to assume that if you're using a glitch, you are also willing to drink a strength elixir every day, though of course if you want to do a strength-based version of the build, you can simply lower your dexterity and wisdom a little bit and put points into strength. For the stat spread there, refer to any of my other monk guides, but for this purely power-based build that's abusing a game mechanic, I'm going to assume you're willing to drink a strength elixir as well. For that reason, we are going to simply take 16 wisdom for maximum AC, 16 dexterity, and 15 constitution. And then with our remaining 2 points, you can either put these into intelligence, giving you a slightly more useful saving throw than charisma, or you can use Auntie Ethel's hair alongside and put them into dexterity to get yourself the highest possible dexterity early in the game. The only skills that you really are going to want are maybe making sure you have stealth, because that's going to be pretty useful for getting up to spellcasters, but later on, and of course getting from shadow to shadow so you can use your shadow powers, but mostly this won't matter. Athletics is also very useful, of course, because when you blink onto someone, you can then push them, and that can be extremely powerful. Repositioning enemies is very good, so I'd probably go with this as your stats, your skill split. This is more or less up to you, though. We're going to take a pretty standard path through monk levels, but there's a couple deviations that we're going to make compared to the default monk. Obviously, at level 2, we don't make any particular decisions. You get access to unarmored movement, which again allows you to move that Susser Bloom around the field more rapidly, which is of course incredibly useful. And all of the great bonus action dashes and so on that monks get. You get the incredible mobility and power of the Way of the Shadow Monk, and something that's important to remember about Way of the Shadow Monk is all of these shadow arts are also not spells, in particular Darkness. You can blink onto an enemy and have Anti-Magic Field plus Darkness, which traps them in the Anti-Magic Field with you, especially alongside a mechanic we're going to use later on. Blinding them and preventing them from casting spells renders pretty much every enemy completely unable to do anything useful. Enemy ranged attackers won't be able to leave. Notice that the one thing to keep in mind is that the anti-magic field also works on the Githyanki's racial spells, even though those are technically psionics rather than spellcasting, but this game just counts them as spellcasting. And so that will allow you to prevent enemy Githyanki from using their racial Misty Step to get away from you and make ranged attacks. You can trap them next to you with the anti-magic field, trap them in darkness so they can't range attack anyone and are blinded, and completely render them helpless with just this one character. At level 4, like most monks, we are going to select Tavern Brawler. Tavern Brawler, of course, doubles your to-hit chance, allows you to add twice your strength modifier to both to-hit and damage of unarmed attacks. And the attack rolls component of this is really important, because the second feat that we're going to take is Sentinel. Sentinel allows you to make weapon attacks against enemies if they hit an ally, which is the less important part. But more importantly, if you hit an enemy with an opportunity attack, they can't move. In Baldur's Gate, they get a little bit of distance from you, but that little bit of distance is not enough to get them out of the anti-magic field of the Susser Bloom. So as long as you have Sentinel and a reaction, you can trap a wizard permanently inside the anti-magic field if you hit. Well, we're going to hit pretty often because Tavern Brawler allows us to add our strength modifier to our to-hit rolls twice, giving us breaking what's called bounded accuracy, which is a concept in Dungeons & Dragons which tries to limit your ability to hit to between certain values. The way that Tavern Brawler works completely breaks that concept, allowing you to hit much, much more reliably than you should be able to in this game. You'll notice that you often have 90% or 95% chances to hit with your Tavern Brawler attacks, meaning that enemies are extremely unlikely to escape. If you have Tavern Brawler and Sentinel, you can very reliably hit them with a Sentinel opportunity attack, preventing them from getting away and keeping them trapped inside the anti-magic field. This is why we took 15 Constitution. Also, we can then use the Tavern Brawler point to get up to 16 Constitution, giving us quite a lot of hit points, and actually quite solid AC even outside of armor because we have 16 Dexterity and 16 Wisdom. If you then were to boost your Dexterity to 18, then you'd end up with 17 AC before you are wearing anything like the Bracers of Defense or anything along those lines, which isn't the best AC in the game, but is still pretty darn good for a character that's not wearing any armor. Monk level 5, we get a second attack, which of course lets us actually kill things faster, and we also get the Cloak of Shadows, which allows you to become invisible. This one, for whatever reason, I believe is a spell cast, so you won't be able to do it when you are carrying the Susser Bloom. You could theoretically put it down, cast this, and then pick it up, which I don't think counts as an action. I haven't actually tried that, so if someone wants to confirm that in the comments, by all means go for it. But for the most part, you won't be using Cloak of Shadows because you won't be able to cast it as a spell. However, what you do get is Stunning Strike, which prevents enemies from taking a turn, allowing you to stop non-spellcasters from taking any actions, and giving you a ton of additional options for how to deal with various enemies. You also get some extra key points, giving you more access to darkness, and so on. At level 6, you get the reason that we're here. You get Shadow Step, allowing you to blink on top of spellcasters. With your your quite reasonable dexterity on this character, you're going to have quite solid initiative, letting you go first, and we're going to actually make sure that we have ways to boost our initiative later on, especially if you're using Anti-Ethel's Hair and have 18 dexterity. You should win initiative on most fights and be able to get into melee with any enemy on any field pretty much instantly because of your Monk bonus movement speed from improved unarmored movement, your Monk bonus action dashes from your level 2 feature, and Shadow Step allowing you to teleport between any areas of darkness. You can also, while stealthed before combat starts, set up areas of darkness using your darkness ability, and you can teleport from shadow to shadow using Shadow Step. An important item for this character also, by the way, is the Eversight Ring, which makes you immune to blind. That will make you immune to your own clouds of darkness, allowing you to gain the benefits of darkness without any levels in Warlock. Monk level 7, we get Evasion, which is always nice, of course, and Stillness of Mind. Stillness of Mind is actually very good because it, combined with our quite reasonable Wisdom, means that we are very unlikely to fall prey to Charm or Frightened effects, or fall prey to Wisdom targeting effects. Enemy spellcasters won't be able to hit us with other Wisdom targeting effects, and a lot of the Charmed and Frightened conditions that can be applied are through Illithid Psionics in the game. Something that I actually have not been able to test yet is whether the Susser Bloom stops enemy Illithids from casting their psionic abilities. I don't believe it does, but it really depends on how the game has coded it. So, again, if someone ends up actually playing this character all the way through, do let me know. Monk level 8, we get a second feat, and the second feat that we are going to take, of course, is Sentinel, for all the reasons that we talked about. When we can keep an enemy adjacent to us, they cannot cast spells, and so with advantage on opportunity attacks, the hit bonus from Tavern Brawler, and the ability to prevent enemies from moving completely using Sentinel, all enemy spellcasters will be trapped next to us pretty much permanently. We would need to roll quite badly. It's a 1 in 400 chance of rolling 2 natural 1s, and since we have advantage, we would have to roll 2 natural 1s in order to miss an opportunity attack. And if we hit them at all, then they can't move for the rest of the turn and are trapped, unable to cast spells. It's possible, of course, that you'll hit a 1 in 400 chance at some point during your playthrough. I think you'll probably roll about, I don't know, at a wild guess, maybe 2,000 dice. So this could happen in an important fight. It's not completely impossible, but the chances are vanishingly small that an enemy spellcaster is ever going to cast a spell once this character gets on them. And of course, you get to keep other enemy melee characters next to you if you want them. Like other monks, this character can also play a pretty solid hit and run style, because you're very fast. You can run in, unleash a flurry of blows against an enemy, including a bunch of stunning strikes, preventing them from acting at all. This works just as well as every other monk against enemy melee characters, with the added advantage of completely dunking on spellcasters. You could go to monk level 9 to get advanced unarmored movement, but I think in general, monk level 9 is not going to be that important for this build, even though a lot of builds stop at 9 and take 3 levels in Rogue. Because you have Shadow Step, you should be able to ignore difficult terrain anyways. The additional jump distance is very useful, but Shadow Step more or less replaces that in most arenas, as long as you're not in pure bright light the whole way through, and you can put out lights using arrows and so on by just shooting the torches, or create areas of darkness or fog cloud or whatever that count as obscured, allowing you to teleport between them. So instead of going to monk level 9, we're going to go straight into Rogue, gaining access to Sneak Attack, which unfortunately does not work with unarmed attacks, but more importantly, we get to have these cunning actions without the use of key points, and then at Rogue level 3, we get access to the Thief Rogue subclass, giving us an additional bonus action, which can be an additional flurry of blows. It can also be an additional cast of Shadow Step, so if you need to teleport 120 feet in a round, then you can Shadow Step twice in a round using the Thief Fast Hands feature. This also lets you Shadow Step on top of an enemy, hit them, and then Shadow Step away for sort of the Nightcrawler-esque playstyle, where you pop in out of the shadows and then disappear, allowing you to do some pretty ridiculous things during various encounters, thanks to the Thief bonus action. Definitely experiment with this, especially because you'll want to end your turn adjacent to an enemy spellcaster, so you're going to want to set up your turns so that you can do that. You don't necessarily need to hit the spellcaster with your actual attacks, so you may want to go hit a different enemy, try to land a stun on them, and then end your turn next to the spellcaster. Because as long as you are adjacent to the spellcaster, they're useless. They're as good as dead already. So it's more important with this build to focus on non-spellcasting enemies, since the spellcasters are completely non-threatening when you have this character in your party. And finally, at character level 12, we're just going to grab Alert. Alert gives you access to much better initiative, and of course the one thing that might allow a spellcaster to do something is if they beat this character's initiative. With Alert and 16 or 18 dexterity, you're almost never going to lose an initiative roll, giving you a massive first mover advantage against spellcasters. A phrase that gets brought up for D&D often is Rocket Tag, basically meaning that whoever goes first has overwhelming power in combat, and that's more or less true. You're typically playing Rocket Tag when you're playing Dungeons & Dragons. Whoever goes first is going to be able to land a blow that not only starts the fight, but also finishes it. This character, that's even more true, because enemy spellcasters get no defenses at all against what you're trying to do. So if you win initiative over them, they will never, ever get to do anything to your party. So Alert, I think, is going to be incredibly powerful for this character as a result of that. You could also, if you wanted to, stop at lower levels of Monk, take 1 fewer feet. You could stop at Monk 6 and take 2 levels of Fighter for Action Surge alongside 4 levels of Rogue. And that would also be a totally reasonable build as well, giving you many additional options in combat, and if you really just want to go all out on damage, then there's no better way to do that. But I think the additional feat, and especially earlier access to having both Tavern Brawler and Sentinel, is going to be incredibly valuable for this build. Up until you get the Susser Flower, of course, you're just going to play out as a normal monk, but luckily a normal monk is an incredibly powerful thing to be, and so you are going to benefit extremely strongly from just playing a monk up until around level 5 or 6 when you can get access to the Susser Flower. I think if you rush the Underdark, because there aren't that many threatening fights on the way, you could probably get the Susser Flowers as early as level 4, and then with Tavern Brawler and the Susser Flowers, that makes certain fights in the game especially trivial. For example, if you pick these up before you fight Auntie Ethel, well, there sure is nothing she can do. The Susser Flower also turns off a lot of enemy legendary actions, because a lot of enemies in the game, their legendary action counts as a spell. So if you were to play this build on Honor Mode, I would say it's probably not that honorable, but it will certainly be very funny, because the bosses will never get to take their legendary actions, and spellcasters will not be able to cast. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this really cool look at the Ultimate Mageslayer build for Baldur's Gate 3. This is one that I just really wanted to have fun with, because it's such a cool glitch that we get to use, and while it is somewhat abusive, of course, of the game mechanics, it's so fun and so cool that I really wanted to show it to you. As always, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching these. 2023 was incredible in the sense of watching this channel grow. The last 6 months have been amazing, and I want to thank everyone who has been tuning in, leaving comments, who has subscribed, and of course the extremely generous people who have seen fit to donate or become channel members. I'll be thanking you all shortly as well, individually, so thank you so much, everyone, and if you've enjoyed the video, of course, you can feel free to do any or all of those things. Alright, my friends, cheers, and I'll catch you next time.